Hello and welcome to Lab 2. So before we get started with the actual lab that we're going to be doing, I just wanted to take care of a couple of housekeeping items. So a number of people had issues with making the VM, and rather than help 20 people individually or so, I figured it was best in the event that for whatever reason your VM doesn't work, be it now or in the future, I should create a copy of the VM that I made, and I have done just that. So by the time you're watching this video, you'll be able to go to eCampus, and there will be a new section called VM. Under whatever section, it doesn't matter that this is a different section than yours. It'll be there, and this is a link to Google Drive. You'll go there, you'll download the OVA. It'll take however long it takes because it's probably at least a couple gigs. And then after you're done with that, you'll be able to just double click on that. And here, let me just move this over to the screen. You can just double click on the file. This will come up. It'll ask you what kind of specifications you want for the hardware that you're going to allocate to it. Depending on your machine, you'll give it, I don't know, 2 CPUs or whatever, 2 cores. I left the default at 4096 for RAM, so it's 4 gigs of RAM. I figured that was a pretty safe number. Most people have at least 8 on their computers these days. If you don't, we can address issues that may arise from performance or what have you. So anyway, you should be able to have at least 2 gigs of RAM on there. I left 4. Everything else is configured. All of the MySQL server, everything's set up. It uses CS230 lab for the password. And then the password to sign in is CS230. Whatever the username is, that's the password. I left it very simple. I'll leave notes on eCampus as to the passwords and everything. So there's also a password file on the desktop of this VM, which is insecure, and you should never do that. But this is a lab, and I'm trying to help you out. So anyway, that's why we're doing what we're doing. Yeah. So what I wanted to talk about next is after the OVA, what we're going to be working on this week is going to be the starting page. It's going to be like the landing page when you get there to your website. You're going to be building an e-commerce or a review website. It's your choice which direction you go with that and what you decide to sell or review. And before we get to that, I just wanted to kind of go through some of the demographics. The survey is no longer available. That is closed. The majority of people wanted the streaming platforms that we're already using. I'm using Zoom for the meetings, Discord for the chat, and YouTube to post videos. For posting the lab demos, an overwhelming majority of you said YouTube. I don't like MediaSite, but if the majority of you chose it, I would have gone with that. So given that only 4 of you said MediaSite, I'm going to go with YouTube. It seems to be the most accessible. These questions aren't really relevant to you. This one is, however. There is a super majority of people who said that they wanted to move forward with online labs for the rest of the semester, which is fine. That is obviously somewhat easier for me. For the 9 people who said that they want to keep everything the way it is, I recognize in hindsight that there may also have been some confusion with how this is worded, but if you did in fact understand this correctly and you wanted to still meet in person for the labs because that's how you learn, then you should DM me and we can figure something out to get you the resources and everything that you need and make sure that you're set up to succeed this semester as well. So I'm going to leave the online option open. It's pretty obvious that the majority of the class wants it in this Pac-Man shape here. So all lab videos will be posted on Mondays. The submissions will be due on Friday, regardless of whether you're interested in meeting with me or you want to be doing this on your own online. And yeah, Discord is how we'll be moving forward with that. So just a couple of housekeeping items I wanted to get out of the way before we get started. So this is the VM that I set up. It doesn't matter. If you did it on your own successfully, awesome. Congratulations. Your work was not in vain because you will have to do this at the end when we do AWS anyway. So those of you who are unsuccessful, I made this so that you can get up and get going, but you will need to figure out where you went wrong at the end because you're going to have to install this stuff on your AWS Ubuntu instance when you go to deploy it to production. So yeah. For VS Code right here, when you open it up, if you don't already have the folder on your desktop like I do, like I will in a minute, you can go ahead and clone the repository. If you're using one of the VMs that I provided, for example, or if you haven't set up your GitHub, you haven't allowed it and everything, you can click clone from GitHub, and it'll take you through this process where you go and allow it. So we're going to continue. I have to actually put in the credentials. So I'm going to do that really quickly, and I'm going to pause the video. Okay. So after you log in, you just hit login at that point. This is immediately afterwards. If you see success, you know that things are good. I'm going to choose always allow VS Code. And then these VS Code is the only one who's going to use VS Code links. So always allow. Okay. And open. And this will populate all of my repositories. There's a number of them from over the years, going in increasing levels of professionalism. So my repo for this lab for this semester is CS230. And I'm going to put it on the desktop. Pretty much because it's the easiest for me to find. And I'm going to open this over here in the lower right corner. I'm going to open that clone repository that I just made. And we're going to, I have Git lens on here. I'm allowing it. All right. So Git lens is pretty neat. It'll allow you to see any kinds of changes or things like that occur after you make changes. There's also a Git history one on here that's useful, especially when you're asking me as we're going through this, where things went wrong for you. I can see the difference between yours and mine, and it helps me pinpoint kind of like typos and things like that are different. It also highlights spaces, which is unhelpful, but whatever. Them's the breaks. So anyway, I do want to show you kind of the end goal. And that is going to be this Fanatic website that I have here that just showed up and then it went away. So annoying. Okay, so ultimately you're going to end up with something that looks like this. So this is our about page. It's super basic at the moment. We'll be working on the header in the next class. That's going to give us our nav bar, and it's going to give us a little bit more functionality. For the moment, nothing else is showing up because I'm not logged in. I don't have the database for all this stuff in here, which is why I don't have the ability to log in at the moment. But this is what we're going to be doing this lab. We're going to be building out our About Us page. It's going to have some information, some basics on these people who are our team members, people who are on our board of directors, whatever. Because remember, this is our company, whether it's a review site or an e-commerce site. And we'll get to more of this stuff as we move throughout this semester. But anyway, I wanted to kind of note a few things before we really get going here. So although this class, we won't be doing very at all like any PHP. It's going to be predominantly HTML and CSS. It's still going to be a .php file because we will eventually have a header, and we'll probably define that in the next class. And we will use this kind of this kind of file structure. Fortunately, I can't blow that up, but anyway, I can probably change the preferences on here. So I highly recommend you take a little tour around GitHub, around VS Code. Okay. And yeah, we'll keep that the way that it is. So that makes it a little bit easier for you guys to see. All right, so there's two kinds of files that we're going to be working with this lab: HTML files and CSS files. So CSS files look like this. There's no header or anything like that to indicate that it's CSS. It just has that .css extension. And you have these elements right here in gold. That's the color that it is in my color scheme. You can change your color theme however you want to. There's a material design one that's very nice. There's dark. This is, I believe, set up by default to be dark. So anyway, one of the neat things about VS Code is, for example, with hex values, you can go and you can make modifications to this. You can select somewhere in here, and it'll give you the hex value. And then that makes it very easy for you to visualize what those hex values are. I'm going to do Control Z. So these are elements. Sorry, these are elements. These are HTML elements that you are broadly going to be making modifications to. The ones with the dots, these are very specific classes. And then if you see a pound sign or a hashtag before it, that indicates it's an ID. And we'll get to those later on in the semester. But these are the two that you need to know right now. These are elements in HTML, which you can see in, where's my index.php? So you have element, anything with an opening and closing tag like this is an element with the darker blue. And then class, this is like an attribute of this element right here. Okay, so these elements have properties. Those properties include things like their height, their width, different style options. So those all of the CSS stuff falls under style. It's part of a style sheet. Okay, you'll have in some elements a path that directs you where to find more of that element. For example, with images or with style sheets or scripts, those all need to have a path that points to them so you can find it, so that the browser can go through and look through those files and find out where they are. Some elements you can put stuff in between the tags, like text. You can also nest all kinds of elements within each other. For example, I have all of these divs. It's like a Matryoshka doll situation, Russian doll situation. So you're going to be hearing me say that euphemism a lot in this class because there's a lot of nesting involved when it comes to web development. So what we've got going on in here is we have a row, and inside that row we have 4 columns. Yeah, 4 columns. Okay? And within each of those columns we have a card. So that card is going to have an image with Harrison Ford, Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty, Samuel L. Jackson, and a panda. So each of those columns, each of those cards basically, has a picture, has a header too. So with increasing size of these headers, you get smaller text. So header 1, H1 is the largest of the headers. Okay. And then the P tag is just paragraph. It's basically what you use for text all the time. And then these classes allow us to define characteristics or attributes that we want to share across every one of its identical brothers, or like more or less like fraternal twin brothers. So when I go in, what is this one? Yeah, about.css. I have a class called column, okay, and a class called card. So in all of the cards, this box shadow is applied, this padding is applied. In all of the columns, these attributes are applied. So the way CSS works is these attributes that you're applying to them, these are called attributes. These attributes, whenever you're applying them to a class or to a element, it's going to be at its most specific level. So for example, if you define an attribute in this particular thing, like for this particular header 2, and you say style equals whatever, all right, it's going to apply it only to that one because it's its most specific level. And I will kind of demo this. It's hard to really explain it just verbally, so I will show you what I mean in just a minute. Okay, but hopefully this gives you an idea of what we're going to end up with, at least today.